everybody, and welcome to another episode of Bigfoot Tales. I'm your host, Dan the Bigfoot Man, Soucy, coming to you from the glorious coastline of the state of Maine. And today I want to go over a newspaper article that I found in a 1907 issue. It's from the 23rd of January of the Telegraph-Republican newspaper, and it's titled, "Hairy Wild Man is Captured in Mexico." And normally when I'm going through all these old newspapers and links and books and all the different things that I research as a folklorist, I look in particular for stories that relate to what they always called a wild man. In particular, the ones that are referred to as hairy wild men. So a lot of wild men stories over the years, the vast majority of them are nothing more than human beings that have just left life as usual and left the communities and gone to live in the woods without support of any kind of social structure whatsoever. But as usual, I'm immediately drawn to these stories and hopes that I may find a few morsels that just might link them to what we call a Bigfoot today. And there are a couple of points that I want to draw attention to in this piece. One of them is a suggestion that it may have been a human gone demented, and also the location of his capture in Mexico. This, again, was out of a newspaper out of Texas, by the way, just as a side note here. But frequently we're going to hear stories of wild men that turn out to be simply, as I said, people who have gone wild in response to some catastrophic event. Normally, at least in the research that I've done, it's almost always the rejection of some woman who they've courted and asked their hand for, and been simply rejected out of hand, and they just snap and leave town. However, there's some stories that cannot be corroborated in any of these ways, and the details of the stories compel me to give great consideration that the events that are actually recorded in these old newspaper articles and stories in the books might actually be depicting encounters with that race of people that we call Bigfoot today. And this particular one, the description of the wild man suggests that the being had no language. He ate raw food, he utilized no fire whatsoever, and he was covered all over with long, shaggy hair, which superseded the need for covering of any kind. Many of the wild men caught in the past had at least some kind of covering, if not against the weather, then for modesty's sake. And these kinds of stories I place in the pile of wild human being class of encounters. Just normal humans that have gone demented, or just, like I said, just decided to leave society, or the societal structure that we've come dependent upon today. The other interesting aspect about this story is the location of the capture, which was actually in Mexico, in the state of San Luis Potosi, which is located roughly in south-central Mexico. It's an area of little renown. It's a poor area, not much value in the area around there. A few dirt farmers, and that's about it. Very little culture. At that time, it was just a small village. But I find it interesting in that this area is just a few hundred miles from the state of Sinaloa, which is where the famous Julia Pastrana was discovered. And I'm sure you've probably heard about Julia Pastrana along the way in your Bigfoot followings to date. She was exhibited in Europe as a wild woman, and she also was covered in hair. Many people depict her or suggest that she just had a beard, a man-like beard, and was all covered. And there are some other details that she had, such as the double row of teeth, and so forth, but we'll look at that story some other time. The point of the potential connection is that this wild man may well have been related to Pastrana, of course, again, if this is a real story. A few hundred miles was a long distance in the 1800s. It still is today, but we don't seem to think of it as much of a distance as it used to be. But it is still possible for related families to be separated by such a distance as people moved to find a better life elsewhere. Miss Pastrana was found as a slave at a moderate-sized Mexican farm, and her actual parentage was unknown. Supposedly, as the story goes, she was found wandering in the desert by her owners. There's a lot of details about here that are questionable about that. It is a fact that she was taken from her home in Mexico and brought to Europe, and married the man that took her to Europe and displayed her as a sideshow exhibit. But anyway, we'll get back to that story some other time. But as usual, we'll get right into the story here, and we'll let you come to your own conclusion as to whether this is a true story or not. And again, this is from the Telegraph-Republican, bylined in San Antonio, Texas, from 1907. But here's the article. Title: Hairy Wild Man is captured in Mexico. Subtitle: Eats only raw meat and vegetables and possesses low order of intelligence. A wild man, such as not been seen before, has recently been captured in Mexico. A miner who recently arrived from Zalidia, a small village in the southern part of the state of San Luis Potosi, tells of the capture alive of the most remarkable creature. A wild man is now detained in Houston and will be transferred to some museum if his life is preserved. He's about 6 feet tall, vigorous, covered with long hair, and has blue eyes and a ruddy complexion. He eats raw meat and uncooked vegetables, but will not touch cooked food. He has no apparent language, but seems to possess intelligence above that of dumb brutes. Travelers in the remote mountains of El Apio a month ago saw the wild man and gave chase on horseback. The creature was run to earth in a natural cave in a hillside. There he was overpowered only after a fierce fight. There was no furniture in the cave, nor any appearance of there ever having been a fire. Bones and portions of roots and fruits were scattered about the place, which presented the appearance of having been inhabited by the wild man for many months. There was a fragment of calico in the cave, which may have been a part of the garment. The wild man wore no clothing at all, being well covered with shaggy hair. After the people of the valley below were informed of the capture, they related the disappearance of a young woman from the settlement a year ago. Some of the captors thought there might be some connection between the rag found in the cave and the disappearance referred to. Some persons advanced the theory that the wild man is really a human being who has become demented, and from long exposure and rough living reverted to animal methods, even to the long hair. No signs can be found of any other specimen of the sort, though there is considerable unexplored territory that might cover a few more of this kind without discovery. And that's the end of the article, and I'll leave you with that as usual. I'll let you make up your own mind as to whether this is a true story or not. Again, if you want to go search the records, you're more than welcome to. It's from a newspaper called the Telegraph-Republican, and it was bylined out of San Antonio, Texas. So, happy researching, and thanks for watching Bigfoot Tales again, and for visiting, and until next time, happy collecting.